couple of days before I was about to leave, my dad went into hospital, and it didn't look good. Tony was amazing from Life Journeys, and she, at the last minute, found someone to replace me on the trip, and my dad passed away, so I was really thrilled to have been there. My focus is on self-worth. I want to teach people to know their self-worth as quickly as possible. And yet I see a lot of our wounds coming from our parents, and I love them very much and I bless them. Right up to the moment my dad died, he was a workaholic and pushing really hard, calling lawyers 2 days before he died about trying to create a patent that would make millions of dollars because he had very low self-worth. And now I see myself as a workaholic and working. Well,
don't get too carried away in all of these descriptions and in all of these deductions and in all of these shoulds and shouldn'ts, because we just described to you something that to others from the outside that might look like a workaholic, and that's someone who's tuned in, tapped in, turned on, and whose satisfaction has turned to an eagerness and a passion that someone who's not inside of that and feeling that would not understand. And so it's a wonderful thing to have the conversation of self-worth or worthiness if you're just talking about self, but do not presume to understand one other person, because you just don't know what their mix of vibrations is. You just don't know. And what happens, especially when you assign it to someone that you've hung around with, is that you just dig a deeper hole for yourself. You just sort of did that. I do something that I watched my father do, and in fact I do it because I sort of mimicked it from him, and we want to say maybe, but maybe not. And in either case, why activate it now and use it as a way to influence your receptivity in the now? When you first began speaking and your statement said the word self-worth, were those the words self-worth? I want to talk about self-worth, and we wanted to replace that word with satisfaction, which seems weird. They don't seem like those words go together. In other words, worthiness and satisfaction. But if you're not letting it in, if appreciation of you is flowing to you, all around you, from broader perspective, it's just all around you and you don't feel it, does that mean it's not all around you, or you're just not feeling it? And so the word self-worth, good words. So let's see if we can find some other words that make it more descriptive. I want to talk about why I don't let the love of source in. I want to talk about why, with all of this appreciation and recognition of my absolute and utter brilliance and value and worthiness, why I'm blocking that. Why do I choose to not let it in? Then we want to soften it even more. Not why do you do it, but why don't you stop doing it? Why don't you stop doing that? And of course, anyone would say, well, I would if I knew what to do. And we say, well, we've got to lay the premise. You've got to understand what it is. The thing, we'll go along with you this far in influential, parental influence that is not beneficial. The one thing that so many parents do, they don't do it on purpose. They do it because it was done to them. But the experience of parents with children that is not inducive of self-worth of the child is that the parent somehow wants the child to believe in his or her role as the guide. Parents who have forgotten about their own connection to source energy and who want, usually more than life itself, for their children to live well, stand as a stand-in guidance that really is terrible. Your parents will actually see a flaw in you that your inner being will never see. Not only will they see it, they feel it is their duty or responsibility to point it out to you. And if you don't pay attention and at least act like you heard and then adjust your behavior immediately, they'll keep at you until you do. And so it is the luring you away from your true guidance that is the flaw in most parenting. But we know that they do not do it with any malice or ill intent. They do it because they have lost their own guidance, and so they sure don't want you to be without it. And often they use as their excuse the reason that they dominate you and domineer you and try to do all your thinking for you is because they had already lost their connection with their source. It's so screwy, because sometimes a parent will dominate a child because they had no parent doing it and they felt lost most of their life. And sometimes they'll do it because they had a domineering parent and they feel that that's the way that it's supposed to be done. But in every case they do it is because they did not feel their connection to source energy, and they did not really know what true satisfaction is. They did not understand. They did not stumble across it. A lot of people do stumble across it just through trial and error, through life experience. Sometimes you can discover that when life causes you to intend something and you get fixated on it, like our stubborn friend, she gets fixated on a lot of things. When you get fixated on something that you care about, and so you line up with it, then the law of attraction yields it to you, and you begin to notice while you are fixated on many things or anything that's in your vortex, that as long as you focus upon that, the moving in the direction of that, which always happens if you're not focusing in opposition, is a good feeling. So sometimes, it's rare with humans, sometimes you'll get hooked on that good feeling of feeling good. And then some other well-meaning screwball will say to you, you know, you're much too selfish. You're much too selfish. You care too much about what feels good to you. And then they begin to try to convince you again that satisfaction should only come through sacrifice. If you don't give something up, then you really haven't given anything to anybody. Sometimes Esther will gift someone with something, and it's hard for them to think it was a very good gift because she didn't suffer. She said, I didn't eat all month, and here it is. Oh, Esther, you did that for me? You did that for me? But most, if there's not some sacrifice, then most do not understand the power of the gift. Do you know what your inner being sacrifices in attention to you? Nothing. Nothing. There's no sacrifice. There's no lack consciousness from your inner being. So what worthiness is, what the feeling of worthiness is just not stepping on my own creative toes. Worthiness is having an intention and just thinking thoughts that move me in the direction of it. Jerry wrote a paper even before he met Esther. She can still remember it. She still has some in her file somewhere. She has some of everything in her file somewhere. She has a hanger with files. No airplane, but a lot of files. And the paper, bright yellow paper, several pages across the top. Keep your ideas to yourself until they are fully developed. Because he experienced early on and in witnessing others that there is usually someone up close in your life who does not understand what your vibrational stance is, who will often in a very well-meaning attitude try to talk you out of the direction you're going and therefore head you off from the satisfaction factor. And here it is. If you allow some well-meaning person to be the phony replacement guide for you, and they lead you away from your true satisfaction, it's not very long before you begin to not feel worthy. Because we think that feeling of satisfaction on the other end of that stick is a feeling of unworthiness. It's that utter feeling of not satisfied, you see.